he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance and lifted up their voices, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went back, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back. Praising God with a loud voice, and he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus answered, "Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except for this foreigner?" And he said to him, "Rise and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
I make notes like crazy. I write my sermons out, then I have sort of bullet points, and then I fill in the bullet points. I never know really what's going to come out when I start talking, which is terrifying. But I find it that just this one in particular, just some questions for you. And I don't want to turn this into a cheerleader thing where I have sort of this, an attitude of gratitude. And do you? Because you know what? A lot of really crummy things happen in life. And we shouldn't be thankful for the crummy things that happen in our life. In Paul's, Albert Schweitzer was a theologian about 100 years ago, and he says, "I found the miracle, the secret of life," and it's in Paul's, I think, book of letter to the Corinthians, "Be grateful for all things." But actually it's not be grateful for all things, it's be grateful in all things. Meaning that, can we somehow find a way to be grateful despite the really crappy stuff that happens in our life? We shouldn't be happy or grateful about injustice, about illness, sickness, death, things like that. But I want to ask you this morning, how often do you give thanks? Do you wake up in the morning and sort of take a moment or two and say, "Thank you for the people around you. Thank you, God, for the sun this morning, for the weather, for the season"? Or do you run straight to the coffee machine and you punch the button and you start making lists? I'm guilty of both. I'm guilty of both. But I find when I'm happiest is when I take the time to actually list out things in my head and take the time to say thanks. And apparently this is something that's important to God too. What's the point of this story? Jesus, God incarnate, is happy with the person who comes back and bothers to say thank you. Apparently we're supposed to have this attitude of gratitude. And sure, there's a message in this as well. They had great faith and went merely at Jesus' word and went to the priests and they were healed. But what about this one guy who's a Samaritan? What about the other 9? The other 9 are Jews, and there's a Jewish rabbi who's saying that they're healed, and for them to follow the rule of their culture and religion and go and show themselves to the priest. Are they happy to be cured of leprosy? I guarantee you they are very grateful. Because when you have leprosy, then people literally avoid you so much, they're worried that if you're a leper and you're walking along and the sun is at the right angle, and your shadow, the shadow of your human body with leprosy touches another human being, that they will get leprosy. Can you imagine living outside of town like that? You can never love your loved ones. You can never hug your children. You're forever an unclean outsider. So were they grateful? Yeah, but I think there was maybe a sense of entitlement too. This one guy, I just imagine him walking away saying, "Well, I'm sure they're going to be healed. They're Jews, and he's a Jewish rabbi. I'm a Samaritan. I don't belong." I don't belong in the village because I have leprosy. I'm located in the wrong spot and I'm not part of their religion. And can you imagine as he walks away and his skin starts to turn bright pink and the scales fall off? And this is the guy that turns around and runs back. He's the one that got the unmerited, undeserved gift. And as I think about it and some things that happened to me over Thanksgiving, I think being ungrateful is a pretty bad thing. I just put it that way. Being ungrateful is a pretty bad thing. And I haven't always been grateful myself. But being ungrateful, there's this dance. Gratitude, grace extended from God that you don't deserve and neither do I. Everything in your life is a gift. Where you were born, who your parents are. Everything is a gift. And that grace that flows from God into you and your life, when there is gratitude in return, spawns a thanks, which spawns more grace, which spawns more gratitude into this positive flow of energy. And unless we have you been in a place in your life where you've received a gift that absolutely radically saved your life that you didn't deserve? I hope you will one day if you haven't. I have. I wish I could live my life every day like I did that day in that gratitude. It amuses me when I hear politicians and preachers talking about rights and what we deserve, our rights as this or that. The whole point, really, not the whole point, but a major point of Christianity, if we're following Christ, is giving up our rights, isn't it? It's becoming humble, it's following Christ. Christ had a whole lot of rights he might have tried to exert, but did not. We don't have any rights from God. Our job is to give up rights along the way with Christ to the cross and to be grateful and filled with gratitude and to say thanks for everything that God has done for us. Can I get one more? Love this quote. Again, it just reminds me of this circle, if you will. Grace and gratitude. And saying thanks. And apparently saying thanks is important. Apparently taking the time to say thanks is important. Do you ever notice how does it make you feel good when you tell someone thank you? And they say you're welcome? Does it make you feel good when someone tells you thank you? It's cleansing. It's powerful. One more. Knew there was going to be a story in here somewhere. I think about some of the things that have happened in my journey. This is my stepson, Winston. And I'm thinking about a gratitude story. This is in the parking lot, the long-term parking lot in the airport in Salt Lake City. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Winston has not quite yet been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, but we're on the way. We've got the bags of pills, and I asked him if I could tell the story, and he's grateful. He said, "Oh yeah, tell the story, it's hysterical." This is who I had to get through security that morning. We get off the little shuttle bus because we're leaving the car there for like a month or more. This was back when I was in seminary. And Winston at this point announces to me that he doesn't have his ID. The flight leaves at 5. It's 3:15 or something. It's minus 200. He has remembered his vape pen, which is the size of, a brick. With 4 batteries that you could power the Idaho Nuclear Research Lab. And he's just, I'm like, okay, how are we going to do this? So we get inside, and the line, of course, that day is the one where it's, this routine, and it comes out the back, and then snakes down the terminal. And I'm like, we're done. We're done. I find a TSA person, I said, look, he is mentally ill, he has da-da-da. She's like, does he have a prescription bottle with his name on it? I said, yes. Okay, does he have anything else with his name on it? I think so. And then, of course, we're on the floor in the Salt Lake City airport with the bags open with just crap all over the place. And we finally find a prescription bottle and, I don't know, a library card or something. And a glimmer of hope. And a security agent comes over, and she's very patient. And wouldn't you know, her name is Grace. We start to throw all this stuff back in the bag, and Grace takes us over to this special thing. And then I notice Winston has a tackle box, like a big tackle box. And she's like, is there anything explosive? And when he's like, no, oh, I'm not supposed to do this. And yeah. She opens it up, and it's filled with fishing wire, but metal fishing wire, like garrote wire, and fishing hooks, and things that he twists jewelry in. And there's these knives, and X-Acto, and inks, and all kinds of little bottles with these herb-looking things. And I just am like, okay, we're just going to leave. We'll just pick up our stuff, we will leave. Only I had already gotten through security, and I'm sitting there watching, and this lady takes the time to go through every single thing. And believe it or not, we got on the airplane with that box of garrote wire and fish hooks and X-Acto knives. Grace got us on there. I was thinking about that as I wrote this sermon, and we got all the way to Washington, D.C. that night, and Marta and I go out, and by this point, had recovered. We go to Longhorn, and it was then that I just appreciated Grace being understanding of someone who suffered from mental illness, who couldn't really play by the rules. And how good it made me feel to say thank you. And Marta got up and went to the restroom, and there was an African-American woman in a booth down from us, and she was very, very anxious. She was agitated, and she was counting out dollar bills onto the table. And she couldn't get anyone to serve her. She looked homeless, indigent, and I guess they felt like, well, maybe she's not going to pay for her meal. And so she's furiously counting this money out, and something in me made me go over to her and introduce myself. And she was very anxious, and we talked for a minute. I said I was a seminary student and that kind of thing. And I found a waitress, and I gave her some money, and I bought her dinner. And she was noticed. And you know what? As we walked out of the restaurant, this woman came out and gave me this huge hug and told me thank you. That made me feel so good. This attitude of gratitude is really real. It really is real. Can I get one more as I wrap this up? I read this from Anne Lamott. And gratitude is peace. Gratitude begins in our hearts and dovetails into action. We mysteriously find ourselves willing to pick up litter in the street or let others go first in traffic. You breathe in gratitude and you breathe it out too. Once you learn how to do that, then you can bear someone who is unbearable. Saying and meaning thanks leads to a crazy thought. What more can I give? We take the action first by giving, and then the insight follows that this fills us up too. Sin is not the adult bookstore on the corner. It is the hard heart, the lack of generosity and all the isms, racism and sexism and so forth, But is there a crack or a ribbon of light that might get in? Might sneak past all the roadblocks and piles of stones, mental and emotional and cultural? How can something so simple be so profound? Letting others go first in traffic or in line at Starbucks, even if no one cares or notices. Because for the most part, people won't care. They're late. They haven't heard back from their new boyfriend, or they're fixated on the stock market. And they won't notice that you let them go ahead of you. They take it as their due, but you'll know. And it can change your whole day, which could be a way to change your whole life. And maybe one person in the car, in the lane next to you, or in the line at the bank will notice your casual generosity and will be touched, lifted, encouraged, in other words, slightly changed for the better. Perhaps later they will let someone else go first, and this will be quantum. The movement of grace towards gratitude brings us the package of self-obsessed madness to a spiritual awakening. Gratitude is peace. Amen.